Hello, everyone, and welcome to Level Up Festival, a workshop series where we offer teens crucial life lessons on developing their skills for the future. My name is Zion, and I am honored to be one of your hosts for this event. It is my pleasure to introduce Ms. Golda Lee Bruce, who will be enlightening us on the topic of telling your story for success, how to package and present your best self. Golda is a development storyteller and communication specialist who believes in the power of stories to motivate people and transform lives. As a presenter, speaker, and writer, Golda uses her platform to inspire young people and encourages them to aspire beyond their circumstances, something she was encouraged to do as a student. The floor is yours, Golda. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Zion, and thank you so much to the Level Up Festival for having me and giving me the opportunity to chat with such brilliant young people. I am very excited about sharing today and just getting to know you all a little bit better and taking some questions and so as well from you. So, telling your story for success. I'm going to focus on three things in this very short time that we have together. Three things that I think are really important for you to know at this point in time. The first is about the power of storytelling. Why do we share stories? Why do we tell stories? And why is it important to tell your story? The second thing is about believing the story that we tell ourselves. So, what story are we telling ourselves? What is the fuel in our tank? And the third thing is what I call lessons from the hero's journey. And I'll save that one as a little bit of a surprise for you, hopefully to motivate you and keep you inspired. So let's start with the importance of storytelling. When I tell people that I am a development storyteller, they think about me sitting down under a silk cotton tree with a storybook reading to children gathered around me, right? And I always kind of feel a little uncomfortable about that because for a long time, we neglected the importance of storytelling. We took it for granted. But storytelling is something that we all do naturally. As a matter of fact, it's the thing that distinguishes human beings from other animals on the planet. We organize ourselves around stories. We've shared stories for generations. And storytelling is just a way to connect. So what is it? It's sharing fact in an emotional way. Sharing fact with emotions packed in there. That's simply what it is. I could tell you about a story arc, I could tell you about a story structure, but you already know it. Think about something exciting or funny or sad happening at school, for instance. Somebody fell down, maybe somebody got hurt, maybe a joke happened and you laughed at the top of your lungs. And you want to go home and you want to share this with maybe one of your friends or one of your family members. I don't have to tell you, I don't have to draw you a diagram in order for you to figure out how to tell that story. Naturally, you are able to distinguish the most important parts of the story. You are able to determine what order they should come in. And you are also able to determine how your face should look, how your hands should move, because it comes to you through instinct. And so, storytelling in business or storytelling in development, storytelling for media is very much the same thing. It's borrowing from those natural principles and putting them to work in, say, boardrooms or in television newscasts or in essays, in blogs, in posts on social media. That's basically what it is. And we have found, and when I say we, I mean human beings, have found that stories are an instant way to connect. Think about when you are traveling in a taxi or you're in a maxi and you hear somebody in the front say on their cell phone, "Hey, I have a story to tell you." Immediately you begin to listen because stories are an instant way to grab attention, to keep attention, and to connect with audiences very, very quickly. It's kind of magical and amazing what we're able to do simply by sharing stories. I remember when I was growing up, my family had a shoe store. It was a women's shoe store, and it was pretty successful at the time. And I think it was successful because I had this one aunt who was like the best saleswoman that I had ever seen operate in my entire life. And that was because when people came in the store and they were looking around, she didn't go up to them and say what we know all salespeople say, which is, "May I help you?" Well, hopefully all salespeople do that. She didn't do that. She would start with hello. Then she would begin to listen to what they were saying about the shoes, what they liked, what they didn't like. And then she would share a story about, when she purchased those shoes, how they lasted, how the competitor shoes didn't last. She connected via stories. And I was always amazed because next thing you know, you turn around and the people are walking out of the store with boxes of shoes. And what I learned from that is that stories allow us to connect, and there are other things that can travel on that connection. You can build businesses on that connection. You can build relationships on those connections. But how do we make those connections? We make those connections by sharing our stories. And it's important for you to share your story. It took me a long, 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 long time to figure out that there is power and beauty and there is real currency in sharing your story. And you may be thinking, well, what's my story? I thought the same thing. But all of us have interesting aspects of our lives. All of us have things that we've lived through. We've had obstacles that we've already faced, no matter how young you are. We've had interesting events that have occurred that other people would find exciting. And so I encourage you to think about where you are in your life right now. Think about where you would like to go. Think about the things that you've lived through. And then think about the thing that happened at school that you're now sharing with your family at home, that story that you're eager to tell, and see if you could fit your parts of your life and things that you've lived through into that story structure. You may have had an experience with the SCA that you find a little bit unique. You may have an experience at home that you find is different from that of your friends. You may have experiences that you have just come across that are interesting and that people may want to hear about, and begin to build your story. My story has a lot to do with the way I was raised. I was raised by my grandmother, who was a natural storyteller. My father passed away when I was really, really young, in a very tragic way, in a tragic way that I witnessed. And for a long time, I had, I would say, a bit of a cognitive delay at school. And my grandmother filled that gap in that delay with stories. So she told me stories about God and art and science and everything she built in the language of stories. And now I find myself as a storyteller. And when people ask me, why am I a storyteller? Why am I doing this? I always think about my grandmother, who played a really important part in my childhood after a very traumatic event, and how she spoke the language of stories and taught me the language of stories. And that's my big why. And that's where I want to leave you this first point with the why. Sharing your story gives people an insight into who you are, not what you've studied or where you've gone to school or what you plan to do when you grow up. Stories tell them more about you. They give them a door into your actual life, who you are, what your aspirations are, what drives you, what inspires you. And those things, even though it might seem cliche at times, always connect us. It always works. It is the magic pill when you want to connect instantly with someone. If you want to connect instantly with an audience, if you want to connect instantly with thousands of people, a story is how you do it. So, two, what story are you telling yourself? What story are you believing about you? More and more, I see on social media, this whole idea of tell yourself a different story. And I've seen it to be actually true in my life as well, where if you just think about a difficult day, say you're going through a hard day, you're encountering challenges, it's a very stressful day. You're not enjoying your job at this moment, or you're not enjoying your schoolwork or where you are at this moment. You can frame that day as one of the worst days of your life, which many people are tempted to do, or you can frame it as a day in which you are grateful for the opportunities that you've been presented with. And so you have a choice in every minute of your life to believe one story or another, to believe one story over thousands of others. And the story that you tell yourself is extremely important, because just as stories are the magic pill that connect us to others, stories are also the magic pill that connect us to ourselves. remind us of who we are, remind us of why we're doing what we're doing and why we're going where we're going. And when I worked in the newsroom, a really great time in my life. We had cubicles, and people would put their inspirational quotes. My coworkers would put their inspirational quotes up just to remind themselves of what they believed in difficult moments. And stories are very similar. What you are telling yourself, it's very much the same thing, but it's something that happens internally. You're telling yourself something different from what you see before you. You're choosing to believe a different story, a true story, but a different story in order to make it through a difficult moment, or in order to just motivate yourself beyond what you see before you at any particular point in time. I choose to tell myself the story that I have a gift. I have a gift, which is a speaking gift. I choose to tell myself the story that when I open my mouth, it has impact, and I leave a lasting impression, and I impact people beyond any particular minute that we spend together. And sometimes it doesn't seem as though that story is true, but I know that it is. And so I remind myself of that again and again and again. The story that you tell yourself is important. And finally, the hero's journey. So, the best stories, as you know from watching movies or reading books, the best stories are when the protagonists face many obstacles and many trials and still manage to come out on top. Those are the best stories. When they face realistic hurdles and realistic and very difficult hurdles and still manage to survive them. And so, what I'm saying to you, point three from the hero's journey is simply this: you are in the middle of your story. Maybe not even the middle. You may be one page in to your great hero's journey. And therefore, there are days when you will encounter hardship and difficulty. There are days when you will have to go through trials. But that does not mean that it's the end of your story. It just means that it's another page in a really epic narrative. Keep that in mind when things don't go the way that you want them to go. Keep that story in mind when you face a disappointing day. You are the hero of your own journey, and you will end up on top if you keep going. Thank you, Zion.
Wow, I must say that was incredible. The hero's journey.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Golda, for those encouraging words. I would now like to introduce my co hosts, Zachary and Hadara, to join in on this discussion.
Hi, Zachary.
Hi
Hi,
everyone.
Hadara.
Hi. Hi everyone. I'm Hidara and I'm so excited to be here today listening to Miss Golda Bruce and alongside with Zion and Zachary. And I hope you're all having a blast listening and tuning in. And yeah, I pass it on to Zachary.
Thank you again, Zion. Hello, everyone. Hello, Miss Golda. Thank you again for being here with us. And my first question for you is, what is the biggest factor that has played to help you to be successful?
Oh, wow. We go to big questions right out the gate, right? I think that it has to do with what I just mentioned, Zachary, which is that motivating yourself is important. Having endurance to run the race is important because no matter how hard we work, and no matter how much we study, and no matter how well we do, life can be genuinely unfair sometimes. And you're going to meet difficult days, difficult people, difficult seasons. And so being able to motivate yourself is a real treasure. Having that spark within you that does not fade, that does not die, regardless of what you're facing, for however long you're facing it. And so I think that a person who is able to keep that spark burning, to keep that fire within you burning, to keep going, to keep fueling yourself, to keep running the race and telling yourself a different story is a person who has success.
Hadara, any questions from you?
Yes, I do. What have you learned from past failures and how did you move on from it?
Good question, Hadara. Past failures, as I mentioned before, failure is always there. It's looming. Sometimes you're going to fail, right? But the important part of it, I think, is to really just to keep going, to move past the failure. And what I have seen from my own life, from the lives of others, mentors and others that I've, relatives, is that opportunity can come disguised as failure. In your sphere, in your mind, you're thinking, wow, this is a great failure. When I talk often about when I did Common Entrance, right, which was SEA. Well, Common Entrance was the precursor of SEA, right, or the predecessor of SEA. And when I did it, I did Common Entrance twice. And now that I think back on it, I'm like, Golda, that ain't no big hurdle. But at the time, it was a major trauma for me not to have done well in the exam. And I remember just begging my mother at the time to send me to the school that I had passed for. And she insisted that I do the exam again. I was young and I had a second chance. And she's just like, do it again. What do you have to lose? And I felt as though my world was falling apart. But it turned out to be, that second year turned out to be one of the best years of my childhood. So many experiences, so many friends, so many doors opened through that opportunity, which I thought was a failure. And it has happened again and again and again in my life where I encounter some kind of challenge and I feel like it's just the end of the world, but it's a detour taking me to where I'm really supposed to be. I got into media by chance, by something else failing and not working out. And when I think about that, I'm like, oh my God, I could have missed that had I stayed there in that failure and, just wallowed in it. But moving forward and keeping that momentum is important. And also keeping your eyes open for the lessons as you move forward is extremely important as well.
That's a really good answer to something that many youths face throughout these days. So my question pertains to the pandemic, which we've all been going through for the past 18 months.
Yeah.
How do we change the way we package and present ourselves to land the opportunities which we aspire for during the pandemic? For example, interviews are now done through a phone or a screen. So how do we adapt?
I'm glad that you asked that question because it gives me the opportunity to say something that I wasn't planning to say before, but I think is important. I think the key thing for people of your generation and of your age is to be flexible, to be willing to change and to have the ability to change quickly. There was a time when you went to university at 20 years old and you got a medical degree, and that meant that you had to be a doctor for the rest of your life. That time is gone. People are unlearning and relearning. They're taking up new careers. They're changing to adapt to this changing world. And so flexibility, I know, is your key value in this new open digital world. So be flexible. Don't hold too tightly to any one thing. Yes, work hard. Yes, do the best that you can, but always be prepared to change and to learn new things and to think of things differently. In the pandemic, there were two types of people. There were the people who went, oh my God, I can't deal with this. This is too much. I can't do this. And then there were those who adapted. And those who adapted thrived, and those who did not, because of their own, there many things influence this, but because of their own internal inability to just accept the change, to make the leap, many of them suffered. So be willing to change, strive for what you want. I know that many of you have great aspirations, but also just be willing to pivot.
Zachary, Hadara, anything to jump in? I see we have a question here before. Can you get help to tell your story? If so, how do you get help to understand what should be in your story?
That is a good question. Help, let me tell you about this thing called help. Help is always there for people who want it, right? There are a couple of places that you could learn more about storytelling. Now, first of all, let me start here. You guys live in a different world from the one that I lived in. You have YouTube and you have Instagram and you have LinkedIn and you have the internet. When I was trying to get on the internet at 17 years old, I would have to unplug my landline, plug in the computer and let it sing for about 5 minutes in order to get online. There are so many resources that are available. How to tell a good story. Show me a story arc. You can look at good storytellers. Just look at TED Talks. All of TED Talks is storytelling. Even, influencers online, they do storytelling as well. So that help is always available. There are also, I believe in mentorship. I believe in asking people who know better for help. I get many requests very often from young people saying, can you mentor me? And many times I can't because I just don't have the time. But I tell them, I say, bring me a specific question and I will help you to answer that question. I may not be able to walk with you for the next 5 years, but I can certainly give you advice. So reach out to people who you think do this thing well. Look online. Help is there for those who want help. Trust me. And you don't have to unplug your phone to get help.
Zachary, any questions that
Yes,
you?
I have another question for Miss Golda. I would like to know if you had to start all over again, what would you do differently?
Start what? Life all over again? um, I took a while, and I'm still taking a while to fully believe in myself and be confident about the dreams that are in me. Even talking about dreams and aspirations and what I want to be and hopes and goals, that was not something that I would have done 5 or even 10 years ago. And now I'm much more comfortable doing it. I took a while to get really truly comfortable in my skin and understand the value that I bring to the world and to have faith in that value. And I don't want that for you. I think that each of us has something within us that the world is waiting on. And for some of us, it's being a singer and it's being, on stage in front of millions of people. And for others, it's being a really, really good resource working in a bookstore, which is who I depend on every other week when I go to the bookstore. There's a guy there who knows everything about everything. And so there's value that you bring to the world, and the world is waiting for that value. But we have to recognize it in order for it to find its place on the outside. And I took a while. I took too long. I took too long. I was thinking about what other people thought and how I would look and blah, blah, blah. And I took too long. And if I could change one thing, I would acknowledge the gift that I knew was there very, very early on. And I would begin to walk in it much sooner. But all things in God's time.
I think you're gonna have to pass on that book person so I can get some advice. Question here from
Yes.
one of these. Are mistakes from our past or younger years part of our story? What happens when someone brings those up?
Oh, that's good. So you are the author of your story. No one else is the author of your story. As a matter of fact, if it's one thing that media taught me, is that people believe what you tell them about yourself. It might take a little time, but they do. And so, what story do you believe? If you have moved on from something that you failed at or something that you're ashamed of, if you've moved on from that, everyone else has to move on too. Even the person who wants to remind the world 20 years later, they will have to move on if you no longer allow that to keep you in bondage. So just move on from it. Let it go. Forgive yourself and press on. And everyone else will have to do the same.
Hadara, do you have a question to pose?
Yes. What would you say are your success habits?
Success habits. Oh, that's good. Well, I read a lot. I read a lot. I came to reading late, actually. I started to really read in my early 20s, which I find was late, but it came to me at exactly the right time. And reading allows me to enter worlds and perspectives that I would not normally, in the course of my life, have the opportunity to be a part of. And so I encourage you to read. Read everything, read widely. Um, you know, sometimes, like when people are talking about faraway, distant lands, and I'm able to get into a conversation with them because I've read a book that was, set there. And I think, wow, it's almost as though I went there, but I didn't. And it just gives you keys. It gives you keys to doors all around the world, all around the universe, by simply sitting wherever you are with a book in your hands and reading. And it also helps you to improve your language, your writing, your speaking. So I would say my number one success habit is reading. And I would also say that I'm I'm not a perfect I'm not where I want to be with this, but I'm no longer trying to be perfect. I'm just trying to be me. And that made a whole lot of difference in my life. I'm not trying to be liked more than anything. I'm just trying to be me. And that has worked out. I like being me, being me is kind of cool these days. And so I'm happy that I made the decision or learned the lessons that allow me to just truly be myself rather than trying to be some perfect ideal that I will never live up to.
Okay, and the last thing I have to ask,
Of course.
for all of us, the pandemic has been tough. What is one sentence that you have for everyone out there to keep us going through this pandemic? One sentence.
Hmm. One sentence. It will end. There'll be a moment at which we'll be looking back at this and looking back at the things that we learned. Now, we're always going to live in a world defined by rapid change, right? That's not going to change. But this particular season will end. There's light.
Well, it will end. And
It
remember,
will end.
you are the author of your story.
Yeah.
I now pass to Zachary and Hadara for any final words.
Okay. I want to say thank you again, Golda, for spending your time today. We really appreciate it. And I also want to thank Zion and Hadara, my co hosts, and you, the audience, for tuning in. Level Up is our chance to be ourselves, and you can catch more exciting presentations on levelupyourself.com.
Awesome.
Hadara?
Thank you so much.
Yes. Take away from everything that you said today, Miss Golda Delivers. It's not a matter of what you are and like what you want to be. It's more of who you are, and that determines your success. So it was amazing discussion and conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Zion, Zachary, and Hadara. I mean, I'm very proud of you. You showed up, you did the thing. And no, I really, really am proud of you because you put yourself out there. And this is amazing. I look forward to seeing where all of this leads. And I'm exceptionally proud of all of you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for that, Zachary, Hadara, and Golda. Level Up is being delivered by the Heroes Foundation, Create Future Good, We Say Yes organization, the Caribbean Male Action Network, and Zinc Network, with support from the United States Embassy in Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you everyone for joining us. Don't forget to check us out on our website at www.levelupyourself.com. See you soon.